Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Friday, June 10th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, the House Select Committee began its January 6 hearings and heard testimony from several witnesses about that day. Meanwhile, the Michigan officer responsible for the death of an African immigrant is being charged with a second-degree murder. We have that story. Then, the Department of Justice launching an investigation into the Louisiana State Police after numerous reports of beating and killing black men.
Plus, comedian and actor Marlon Wayans joins us to give us his take on this week's topics with a side eye. And Mike Tyson's story is headed to the screen. We'll tell you who plans to play the legendary fighter. It's Friday. We have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
The House Select Committee investigating the January 6 attacks kicked off its first televised hearing last night. For 2 hours, the panel offered new information about what they call an attempted coup directed by former President Donald Trump. Panel Chairman Benny Thompson says it was all part of Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election he lost to Joe Biden. A U.S. Capitol Police officer described the hours she spent trying to protect the Capitol.
I can just remember my breath catching in my throat because what I saw was just a war scene. It was something like I had seen out of the movies. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were officers on the ground, they were bleeding, they were throwing up, they were, they had, I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood.
The next hearing is scheduled for Monday. Chairman Thompson promises to reveal evidence that will change the public's understanding of the insurrection. They say they will bring into focus for who is really to blame and what really happened. I think we all saw what happened.
Yeah.
I think we all watched it in real time. I think we all know who to blame. I think that this may be for the naysayers, and I understand that they have to go through this so that they can lay out all the evidence that they've collected over the last 11 months. This is the first of 6 hearings they plan to have. Of course, the goal is to reveal, all of the interviews that they've had, all of the people that they've spoken to. So for me, some of the takeaways last night, Elizabeth Cheney, she did a really good job. She revealed that Trump had a sophisticated 7-part plan to overturn the election and prevent President Joe Biden from taking power. So they're planning to show us more evidence of how he actually did that as time goes on. And they also said, which I found interesting, is that a lot of members of Congress actually went to President Trump at the time and asked him to pardon them. So if you did nothing wrong and this was just a friendly, let's go and rally at the Capitol,
right,
why do you need to be pardoned, right? So that to me was interesting. So no matter what, no matter how all this turns out, for me, all of this should lead to the arrest, the conviction, the incarceration of Donald J. Trump. He literally tried to overturn the United States government. We have all the video, the witnesses, and everything to prove it.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Mimi, that all signs should lead to Trump being behind bars. About 1,000 people were interviewed for these hearings. And like you said, Representative Liz Cheney, that was a powerful statement about the sophisticated 7-part plan. Also, there was a Capitol police officer who came forward and talked about having suffered a concussion because he was grappling with rioters outside. Also, so many more things. The former Attorney General, William Barr, we've talked about him before, saying that he literally just resigned altogether because he didn't even want to deal with having to challenge the election results. And so at the end of the day, we all saw what we saw there. But what I really liked in this hearing is that they took their time. We've been talking about this committee coming forward. They took their time and got unseen footage. There was a video of a woman today who was standing outside of the Capitol, and I don't believe we've ever played that video before. And she was saying, I can't let you guys know what's about to happen, but just know that something is about to happen. And I never saw that video ever before. And they showed showed a lot of unseen video, and I think we're going to learn a lot from these hearings.
We definitely are. And we also learned, and here's 6 things we learned from yesterday. I'm not going to give all of them. I know we're running out of time. Trump never called any law to protect them on that day, right? Ivanka Trump said she accepted Barr's assessment of the election. Let's talk about multiple Republican lawmakers sought pardons for White House, which you spoke on, Mimi. And Jared Kushner took White House counsel's threats to resign as whining. These are people that felt like they were going to lose their life that day, right? And the truth is coming to life, and it's pretty much what we already know. So just reconfirming what we pretty much know what happened on that day, and I know there's going to be more things to come for
You know, and not only did Trump not call any authorities, not call any backup, they said it was Mike Pence who actually called the National Guard, and then they want Trump to take the praise for doing that. I mean, come on now. He sat around and did nothing. They also, what I liked about the never seen footage that you mentioned is that they had time codes on the bottom of the video so that you could actually see what happened when and how long it took for this and that sort of thing. And a lot of that so far, this is only, like I said, 1 of 6, and so far it was just damning.
But,
Real quick.
I mean, I feel like we can go on and on, Romeo, because you're absolutely right. The thing here is, though, like about them taking time, Mimi, is they had to take their time. They had to take their time, go back. They couldn't come half do this because we've been talking about it for a long time. They had to take their time, and I love that, too, that they had those time codes.
And Mike Pence, will he get up there? Will he talk about it? Will he go ahead and put it all on the line, saying, I may not be in politics anymore. Republicans may kick me to the curb because I need to come out and say how I really feel about it. This was his right-hand man that Trump said had everyone screaming, hang Mike Pence.
I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to stay
That's the part
quiet.
that's really, I'm like, yo, dude,
I would
here's your
snitch
moment.
on him in a minute, but I don't think he's going to do
He
that.
didn't care about you on that day.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. We sure will. Many questions still remain regarding on how the Uvalde police handled the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School that left 19 children and 2 adults dead. And now, in special session, Texas state lawmakers are launching an investigation into what went wrong on that day, as well as the response. Members said the probe will be objective and nonpartisan. State Representative Dustin Burrows, who will chair this committee, he says the probe will look for a lot of ways and answers and ways to prevent another mass shooting in the state. One of the aspects of the committee needs to look into as a Texas gun law where the purchasing age was lowered from 21 to 18. The shooter purchased 2 rifles on his 18th birthday. And we can go on and on and on about how this gunman and other gunmen that we've seen were 18 years old. We're definitely pushing for gun reform in the world, as well as talking about it on our show. One thing I want to pinpoint here is that the findings will be objective and nonpartisan, and I just have an issue with that because Chief Pete Arredondo, he was one person who defended the time that it took. It was one door that was in between him and getting to the children, and there was a fumbling of a key. He couldn't find the key to get inside the classroom, and he still defended himself. So I'm just worried about, there's so many people that feel like they did the right thing here with Robb Elementary School. Will we get an accurate representation of what really happened that day?
Yeah, I think that there's no defense for anything that they're going to come up with. And I think to get that accurate description of what actually happened is going to take an outside source to come in and actually look at all the information. Them kind of governing themselves and saying that it's going to be fair and balanced. I don't believe that, because then that means they have to place the blame, on themselves. And I don't see that happening. So I know that the DOJ, they're coming in, they're going to do their own investigation. And I think that's when we'll see an accurate description of actually what happened during that day and why it took so long and those sort of things.
As those kids continue to be buried, which is so unfortunate, those parents are still going to juggle with the fact and have to live with the fact, I should have taken my kids home after the assembly or after what they had going on at the school earlier that day. Or just maybe, why do I have to keep hearing different stories, different scenarios, what really happened? It's just, to me, it's like adding salt to a wound. It's not going to ever heal in their lifetime because they can't bring their kids back. So I feel like this guy who's supposed to be in charge, who all of a sudden didn't know that he was the man to be in charge when he got there, who didn't want to carry his walkie-talkie with him because he felt like it didn't work in some parts of the building. There's so many questions that need to be answered, and it's so unfortunate that those parents have to hear about it every day.
Yeah.
Agree. All right, well, the U.S. Supreme Court handing down a decision making agents who violate the Constitution immune from lawsuits. In a 6-3 decision, the court's conservative majority is reinforcing protections for government officials who are usually protected from civil lawsuits. The case stems from a Border Patrol agent accused of abusing a migrant. The court continues a practice of protecting a government official if it is determined they have acted in good faith, carrying out their duties.
A Michigan man running for governor is being charged with misdemeanor charges related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Ryan Kelly was arrested during an FBI raid at his home yesterday. Now, prosecutors say he breached the Capitol, and the story came to light after the state Democratic Party shared a video that shows Kelly standing outside of the Capitol saying this is war. He is currently out on bond. Now, Kelly is one of 5 Republicans running for the party's nomination in August.
And a group of 90 women that includes former Olympic gymnasts like Simone Biles are filing a lawsuit against the FBI for allegedly mishandling its probe of a former Olympic team doctor. The women are seeking more than $1 billion. They say the Bureau failed to properly investigate serious sexual abuse charges against Larry Nassar. Now, the suit says that the FBI knew that this man was a danger to children when his abuse was first reported in 2015. The FBI has refused to comment on this issue.
The Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania wants every voter in the state to re-register to vote. Doug Mastriano says it's the only way to regain trust in the voting process. Mastriano, who is an election fraud promoter and Trump supporter, legal experts say re-registering could violate state and federal laws as well as constitutional protections. His campaign is pushing a conspiracy theory that claims phantom voters are being used by Democrats to win the general election against his Democratic opponent, Josh Shapiro.
And lawyers for Bill Cosby are trying to discredit the woman who say the former TV star assaulted her when she was a teenager 47 years ago at the Playboy Mansion. Cosby's lawyers put a doctor on the stand, Dr. Deborah Davis. She's a psychologist and expert in sexual communication. Davis told the court that the memories can fade over time and a person can develop false memories based on details of unrelated events. Judy Huth says Cosby took her and a friend to the Playboy Mansion in 1975 when she was 16 years old and assaulted her in one of the bedrooms. Cosby, who denies the allegations, will not be testifying in his own defense at trial.
An African-American nurse in Texas says the racism was so bad at the cancer center she was working at that it forced her to get professional help. Jaslyn McMurrin is filing a lawsuit against Galveston's Cancer Center, and she says that as the only African-American staffer in that outpatient center, she suffered from insults and bigoted conduct from her coworkers. McMurrin says that when she reported that was happening to her, managers never did anything. McMurrin says the stress was so great she was prescribed medication.
The Columbus, Ohio City Council is putting limits on how cops use force against protesters. The new law put limits on police using tear gas, rubber bullets, flashbang grenades, and other weapons on demonstrators. This comes after police abuse during the George Floyd protests of 2020. Columbus paid out $5.75 million in settlements to protesters who were injured by officers during marches. The council also passed a resolution that requires cops to display their badge numbers and other identifying information on their uniforms.
The Grand Rapids Michigan officer who shot and killed an unarmed African immigrant is being charged with second-degree murder. After 2 months of community pressure, Kent County prosecutor Christopher Becker is charging the officer Christopher Schur. Now, Schur shot Patrick Loyola in the back of the head after a traffic stop and a short foot chase.
Second-degree murder is a felony offense. It is punishable by up to life in prison with the possibility of parole. It is my understanding, I've been in contact with the Michigan State Police, that Mr. Schur has turned himself in. He has been being processed. He will be arraigned in the 61st District Court in the city of Grand Rapids.
Now, local activists, they were frustrated with how long it took for prosecutors to move forward in the case, calling for the Kent County DA to step aside and turn the case over to an outside agency. So for me, I would say the good news in all of this is the fact that he spent the night in jail. I will take it. His bail was set this morning. He had a bond hearing. It was set at $100,000. Which is high for what we usually see, because a lot of times these are only $15,000. So I'm sure at some point I don't know if he's out yet, but some police union will raise the bail, will raise the money, and he'll be bonded out. But the fact that he was arrested, this is a second-degree murder charge. We'll see what happens. He's claiming self-defense. I don't see how this could be self-defense when you literally chased this man down and sat on him and shot him in the back of the head, but we'll see what happens.
Right, and so Benjamin Crump, he actually posted this on Twitter, and so I was very interested to see what some of the comments were, so I went through a little bit. And so the big discussion is that this was second-degree murder, like you said, and so a lot of people were like, well, why wasn't it first-degree murder? And so it would have been first-degree murder if it was considered premeditated. And so my question is, even to you, Romeo and Mimi, is that, like you said, he hunted this man, chased this man down, sat on him. So I feel like there was some, maybe not to necessarily kill him, but there was something that was premeditated about this.
I think for when you have a premeditation, it was like that says, when I pulled him over, I'm going to kill this man. Like he immediately thought, like he knew him beforehand and he kind of planned it. So I think that's what the premeditation would go for. It would stand for. I think this kind of was in the heat of the moment and it happened, and so that's why it's second degree.
Yeah, and officers are trained to handle things a certain way. This man did try to run from him. If at this point he's not in his vehicle anymore, he's not a threat. So there's no need for it to end this way. Accountability has to be held up against these police officers, so we have to start doing this more and more.
Absolutely. Sure. Now, speaking of accountability, Romeo, the Department of Justice is opening an investigation into the Louisiana State Police after a number of incidents involving troopers beating and killing black men. The probe comes a month after revelations Governor John Bel Edwards watched footage of the fatal beating of Ronald Green by troopers. Now, the video was not turned over to state investigators for 2 years.
Received information about the repeated use of excessive force, often against people who are suspected of minor traffic offenses. There are reports that officers target black residents in their traffic enforcement practices and in use of force.
The probe will be the first pattern and practice investigation into a statewide police agency by the DOJ in almost 20 years. And, this, I'm not surprised about police officers looking at footage, because honestly, that's how I look at police officers. That's all, I personally feel like that is what police officers do. They hide footage. They look out for each other. They're not really truthful. Again, taking 2 years. What else do we expect to be going on in that time? Yeah,
I mean, we do a lot of stories here about the Louisiana State Police, so I am a champion of them looking into this. We just did the story the other day of the 67-year-old man who was beat by police on his way home from painting a friend's house. We do all kinds of stories here where they are just they end up after a routine traffic stop either being killed or brutally beaten or something. And the death of Ronald Green was extremely rough. It was extremely hard to watch. And I'm glad that the Justice Department is looking into what's happening here.
Agreed. All right, moving on. A Tennessee man on death row is appealing a trial judge's refusal to vacate his death sentence, even though prosecutors agree the man is intellectually disabled. Lawyers for Byron Black will challenge the judge's refusal. There's a law in Tennessee designed to provide condemned prisoners a way to enforce the constitutional ban against executing people with intellectual disabilities. Black was convicted of capital murder in 1988, the death of his girlfriend and 2 daughters.
And there's video of a Democratic activist being attacked by an Arizona State Senate candidate at a campaign event last weekend. 73-year-old Peter Jackson wore a Black Lives Matter t-shirt and an N95 mask to the mixer. He was verbally assaulted by some of the people at the event who wanted him to leave. The video shows a woman trying to take his cell phone before she hits him. Now, Jackson hits her back, and that's when a GOP candidate, Blake Masters, attacks the man. Masters is the same guy who said black people were the reason for the gun violence in the United States. Now, Masters says he attacked the man because he hit a woman.
The Minneapolis Police Department is the subject of yet another lawsuit. Andre Moore says his civil rights were violated twice in a matter of months by cops. Now, this is police body camera footage that you're watching of Moore's arrest. According to the lawsuit, officers pulled a gun and a taser on Moore as he completed and complied during a traffic stop in 2019. Lawyers for Moore say officers beat him until he was unconscious. Moore says cops tried to frame him by placing drugs on his person. Now, a judge dropped the drug charges against Moore, but Moore's attorney says that he sustained a broken nose, multiple cuts, his eyes were swollen shut, and his face was splattered with blood. The lawsuit is one of many filed by black people in Minneapolis against the city's police department.